The night Cale Thornwood was born, the midwives swore they had delivered a corpse. The infant emerged cold and still, his skin pale as moonlight, lips tinged blue. No cry pierced the air. No breath stirred his chest. And most terrifying of all, when the head midwife pressed her trembling fingers to his tiny sternum, she felt nothing. No pulse. No heartbeat. Just silence where life should have thundered. His mother, the former Luna Queen, bled out on the birthing bed while the council elders gathered in horrified whispers, debating whether to destroy the abomination or hide him away. But then the baby opened his eyes, silver as starlight, and released a growl that shook the windows. He was alive, impossibly, defiantly alive, and in that moment, the prophecy that would haunt him for 30 years began to circulate through the supernatural world. A king without a heart would either unite the packs or burn them all to ashes. Cale learned early that fear was the only currency that mattered when your existence defied nature itself. Other wolves could hear each other's heartbeats, could sense the life force that connected pack to pack, but when they stood near him, they felt only an abyss. It unnerved even the strongest warriors. So he cultivated that unease into terror, ruling the northern territories with an iron fist wrapped in calculated cruelty. He never raised his voice because he never needed to. One look from those mercury eyes, and even the most rebellious wolves remembered why he had survived 30 assassination attempts before his 18th birthday. The palace he inherited was built from black stone that seemed to swallow light, perched on the edge of a cliff where the forest met the sea. It suited him perfectly, a monument to beautiful emptiness. His advisors called him strategic. His enemies called him a monster. Neither was wrong. And deep in the hollow cavity of his chest, where an organ should have been pumping life through his veins, there was only silence and the faint ache of something missing that he refused to name. If you are enjoying this story so far, please consider hitting that like button and leaving a comment below telling us what you think of Cale. Is he a victim of his circumstances, or has he become the very monster they feared? And do not forget to subscribe for more supernatural romance stories that will leave you breathless. 300 miles south, in a town so small it barely appeared on maps, Isla Morven was fighting a losing battle against compassion. Her veterinary clinic had started as a legitimate practice, but somewhere along the way it had transformed into a sanctuary for every broken, abandoned, and unwanted creature within a 50-mile radius. The bank sent threatening letters monthly. Her apartment above the clinic leaked when it rained. Her last relationship had ended when her boyfriend complained that she loved animals more than people, which was not entirely unfair. But when Isla looked into the eyes of a 3-legged dog or a cat with half its fur burned away, she saw something that most people missed. She saw the stubborn persistence of hope, the refusal to give up even when the world had given up on you. It resonated with something deep in her own history. The memory of being a foster kid shuffled through 7 homes before Martha Morven, a widow with kind eyes and weathered hands, had finally given her a permanent place to belong. Martha was dying now, cancer eating through, her lungs with methodical cruelty, and Isla spent her mornings at the clinic and her evenings at the hospice, watching the only mother she had ever known fade a little more each day. Some nights the weight of it all pressed so heavily on her chest that she could barely breathe. But she pushed through because that was what you did. You pushed through. The storm hit on a Tuesday in late October, the kind of tempest that made meteorologists nervous and old women check their emergency supplies. Isla had secured the clinic and was driving the winding forest road toward the hospice when she saw it. At first, she thought it was a trick of the headlights, rain creating illusions on the pavement. But then, the lightning flashed, and she saw it clearly. A massive wolf, larger than any wolf had any right to be, lying in the middle of the road. Blood matted its dark fur. One of its hind legs was bent at an unnatural angle, and its eyes, glowing silver in the storm, fixed on her with an intensity that made her heart stutter. Every rational instinct screamed at her to drive away. Wolves were not native to this region. A wolf that size was impossible. But Isla had never been particularly good at listening to rational instincts when something was hurting. She grabbed the emergency kit from her trunk, pulled on her rain jacket, and approached slowly with her hands visible. The wolf watched her come closer, a low rumble building in its chest that could have been a warning or simply pain. When she knelt beside it, close enough to see the intelligence burning in those otherworldly eyes, she whispered the same thing she said to every frightened animal. "Do not worry. I am going to help you. I promise." And for reasons she would not understand until much later, she added, "You are not alone anymore." Getting a 200-pound injured wolf into her truck should have been impossible. But desperation made her creative. She fashioned a makeshift stretcher from a tarp, used leverage and determination, and somehow managed to load the creature into her truck bed with a covered cap. It did not fight her. It should have. Any wild animal in that much pain should have snapped at her. But instead, it simply watched her work with those unsettling silver eyes, as if evaluating her worth. The drive back to her clinic was treacherous, the storm intensifying until she could barely see through the windshield. When she finally got the wolf onto her examination table, working under the fluorescent lights with her hands shaking from adrenaline and cold, she realized the full extent of the injuries. Fractured femur, deep lacerations across the ribs, signs of internal bleeding. This wolf should be dead or dying, yet its breathing was strong, its eyes alert. She worked for 3 hours straight, setting the bone, stitching wounds, administering antibiotics and pain medication that she calculated based on body weight and hoped was correct. And through it all, the wolf never made a sound. It just watched her with an expression that seemed far too human, far too aware. When she finally finished, exhausted and covered in blood, she stroked the thick fur between its ears and said, "You are going to be okay now. I do not know where you came from or how you got so hurt, but you are safe here." The wolf closed its eyes, and for just a moment, Isla could have sworn she saw something like relief cross its massive face. She fell asleep in the chair beside the examination table too, tired to climb the stairs to her apartment, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, and her hand resting lightly on the wolf's side so she could monitor its breathing. She had treated hundreds of animals, but something about this one felt different. Important. Like this was a moment that would split her life into before and after. Though she could not explain why. Her dreams were strange, filled with silver light and the sound of a heartbeat that echoed like thunder. When she woke to the gray light of dawn filtering through the clinic windows, she was alone. The examination table was empty. The blanket she had draped over the wolf was folded neatly on the counter, and standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the morning light, was a man. He was tall, powerfully built, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders, and eyes the exact shade of silver she had stared into the night before. He wore only a pair of black pants that he must have found somewhere in her storage, his torso bare, and revealing a physique carved from violence and survival. The lacerations she had stitched were still visible, angry red lines across his ribs, but the bone she had set was already healing with impossible speed. And when their eyes met, Isla felt something in her chest shift, like a key turning in a lock she had not known existed. The man spoke first, his voice low and rough as if he was not accustomed to using it. "You saved my life." It was a statement, not a question, delivered with the flat effect of someone reciting facts. Isla scrambled to her feet, her mind racing to process what she was seeing. The logical explanation was impossible. The impossible explanation was that she had somehow brought a shapeshifter into her clinic. Werewolves were supposed to be myths, stories to scare children, but she had seen enough strange things in the rural areas near the forest to have learned not to dismiss the impossible too quickly. "Are you?" she started, then stopped, unsure how to even phrase the question. "Are you the wolf?" He moved further into the room with the predatory grace of something that had never been prey, and she saw the exact moment he registered her scent more deeply, saw his entire body go rigid as if struck. His hand came up to his chest, pressing hard against his sternum, and his expression shifted from blank neutrality to something that looked almost like pain. When he spoke again, his voice was laced with something between wonder and horror. "What are you?" And why is my heart beating? If you are still with us, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who loves supernatural romance. And drop a comment telling us whether you think Isla should trust this mysterious stranger or run as fast as she can. Your engagement helps us create more stories like this one. The question hung in the air between them. Strange and impossible. Isla pressed her own hand to her chest, feeling her heart pounding against her ribs. I am human, she said slowly. I am a veterinarian. I found you injured, and I brought you here. What do you mean your heart is beating? Is not it supposed to beat? The man, the wolf, the impossible creature in front of her, stared at her with an intensity that made her feel like he was looking straight through her skin to something beneath. I was born without a heartbeat, he said flatly. For 30 years there has been nothing in my chest but silence. But right now, standing here with you, it is beating. I can feel it, and it hurts. He said that last word like a confession, like admitting pain was a vulnerability he had spent his entire life avoiding. Isla took a step toward him, her healer instincts overriding her fear. Let me check. You might have internal damage I missed. She reached for him, and he caught her wrist. Not roughly, but firmly, his skin fever warm against hers. Do not, he warned. You do not understand what you have done. What you are. But he was looking at where they touched, at the point of contact between them, and Isla could feel it too. Something electric. Something that made her pulse jump and her breath catch. She pulled her hand free and he let her go immediately. But the sensation lingered. You need to tell me who you are, Isla said, forcing her voice steady. You need to tell me what is happening. The man was silent for a long moment, as if weighing whether she deserved the truth or whether truth was simply too dangerous. Finally he spoke. My name is Cale Thornwood. I am the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. And you, little healer, have just become either my salvation or my destruction. I have not decided which yet. He moved to the window, looking out at the forest beyond with the wariness of someone who expected attack from every direction. I was hunting near the border when I was ambushed. Silver bullets, 6 shooters, coordinated assault. They left me for dead, and they should have succeeded. But you found me. You brought me here. And now my heart beats for the first time in my life, but only when I am near you. Do you understand what that means? Isla shook her head slowly, her mind reeling. In my world, he continued, there are rules. Laws written in blood and instinct. When a wolf finds their mate, their true mate, there is recognition. A bond. But I never expected to have one because I am not fully alive. I am an anomaly. A mistake. Yet here you are, a human woman who smells like hope and healing, and my body is responding to you in ways it has never responded to anything. Isla sat down heavily in her chair, processing information that should have been impossible. So what you are saying is that we are, what, soulmates? Destined? That is a fairy tale. Kyle turned from the window, and there was something almost amused in his expression, though it did not reach his eyes. Most humans say werewolves are a fairy tale too. Yet here I am. He moved closer, crouching down so they were at eye level. I am not asking you to accept this. I'm not asking you for anything except answers. What are you, Isla Morven? Because humans do not make dead hearts beat. There is something in you, something old and powerful, and you do not even know it. She wanted to argue, to insist that she was just a veterinarian from a small town, but doubts crept in. The animals that came to her always calmed under her touch faster than they should. Wounds that should have taken weeks to heal seemed to improve in days. Martha used to joke that Isla had magic hands, but it was always said with a laugh, never serious. What if it had never been a joke at all? Before she could respond, Cale's head snapped toward the door, his body tensing into a predatory crouch. Someone is coming. Multiple someones. His eyes met hers, urgent and fierce. If you value your life, you will stay behind me, and you will not make a sound. He moved to position himself between her and the door. Just as it burst open, 3 men entered, all of them with the same unsettling grace, the same predatory awareness. Werewolves, Isla realized with a jolt. All of them. The one in front was older, maybe 50, with gray threading through his dark hair and scars crossing his face like a roadmap of violence. His eyes found Cale, and something flickered there, surprise and anger, and something that might have been fear. "My king," he said, and it sounded like a curse. "We tracked your blood here. We thought you were dead." "Clearly," Cale said, his voice dropping into something cold. "And dangerous? You were mistaken. Who sent you, Garrett? Was it the Eastern Coalition? The Southern Pax? Or was it someone closer to home? The man, Garrett, had the grace to look uncomfortable. There are questions, my king, about your fitness to rule, about whether a king without a heart can truly lead. Some believe your time has passed." Kyle smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Isla had ever seen on a human face. "Some believe?" he repeated softly. "Let me be very clear about Garrett. I have survived 30 years of attempts on my life. I have crushed rebellions and ended bloodlines. The fact that my heart did not beat never made me weak. It made me efficient. It made me ruthless. And now," he paused, and Isla saw him make a choice in real time. "Now it beats. So tell whoever sent you that the prophecy is changing. Tell them that the heartless king has found his heart. And tell them that if they come for me again, I will show them exactly how creative I can. Be with my cruelty." The threat hung in the air, and Isla watched the 3 wolves in front of them exchange glances. Garrett's eyes slid to her, assessing, calculating. "Is she your mate, my king?" The question was a trap, and everyone in the room knew it. Admitting it made her a target. Denying it was a lie that could be sensed by every wolf present. Kyle did not hesitate. "Yes, she is mine, and she is under my protection. Anyone who touches her forfeits their life. Is that understood?" The wolves bowed their heads in a gesture that looked like submission, but felt like threat. "Understood, my king. We will spread the word." Garrett paused at the door. "But you should know that the council has called for a gathering. They want proof. They want to see this miracle for themselves." Kyle's expression did not change. "Then they will see it. 1 week from now. Tell them to prepare the ceremonial grounds." Dismissed. When the wolves left, the silence they left behind was deafening. Isla found her voice finally, shaking, but determined. "You just told them I am your mate. You just painted a target on my back without even asking me." Cale turned to her, and for the first time she saw something like regret in his eyes. "I painted a target on your back the moment you whispered my name in that storm," he said quietly. "The moment my heart started beating because of you. You became the most valuable and most vulnerable thing in my world. I am sorry for that. Truly. But I cannot undo it. The supernatural world knows about you now, and they will come for you whether I claim you or not. At least this way. You have my protection. And believe me when I say that there is no one more dangerous to have as an enemy than me. Do not forget to subscribe if you want to see how this story unfolds. We are just getting started. And trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next." Ela spent the next 3 days in a fog of unreality, trying to maintain normal life while her world tilted on its axis. Cale stayed close, recovering with supernatural speed, explaining in careful detail the world she had stumbled into. Werewolf society was ancient, complex, bound by traditions that predated written history. The Alpha King ruled the Northern Territories, the largest and most powerful region, but his authority was constantly challenged by ambitious subordinates and rival packs. The fact that he had been born without a heartbeat had been hidden as much as possible during his childhood, revealed only when he came of age. Some saw it as a sign of strength, a king who could not be weakened by emotion or sentiment. Others saw it as proof that he was cursed, wrong, unfit to lead. The Council of Elders walked a careful line between both interpretations, keeping him in power because he was effective, but always watching for signs of weakness. And now his heart beat, but only near Isla, which meant she had become a linchpin in supernatural politics whether she wanted to be or not. Martha died on the 4th day. Ela was holding her hand when she took her last breath, and the grief that crashed over her was so profound, she could barely stand. Kale found her in the hospice room hours later, still sitting beside the body, tears dried on her face and a hollow look in her eyes. He did not offer empty platitudes. He simply sat beside her in silence, and when she finally broke, sobbing into her hands, he pulled her against his chest and let her fall apart. And there, pressed against him, Isla felt it, the steady, strong beat of his heart, pulsing under her ear like a promise. He was alive because of her. This impossible, dangerous, broken man had a heartbeat because she had whispered his name in a storm. It did not fix the grief, did not bring Martha back, but it reminded her that life persisted even in the face of death, that hope was stubborn and survival was an act of defiance. When she pulled back, wiping her eyes, Kale was looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. "You make me feel," he said quietly. "I did not think I was capable of it anymore, but you make me feel everything." "It is terrifying." Isla managed a weak laugh. "Welcome to being human," she said. "It is awful and beautiful, and it never stops." He touched her face gently, his thumb brushing away a remaining tear. "I do not want to be human," he said. "But for you, I think I would try." The gathering was held on the 7th day, deep in the forest on grounds that had been used for supernatural ceremonies for centuries. Isla wore a dress that Kale's people had provided, simple but elegant, and tried not to think about how she was about to be paraded in front of werewolf nobility like a prize. Kale was beside her, dressed in formal black, every inch the Alpha King despite the impossibility beating in his chest. He had spent the morning teaching her what to expect, how to hold herself, what not to say. The most important rule was simple: do not show fear. These wolves could smell it, could sense weakness, like sharks sensing blood, and any hesitation would be used against both of them. So Isla lifted her chin, straightened her spine, and walked into the gathering like she belonged there. The ceremonial grounds were a clearing surrounded by ancient trees, lit by hundreds of candles and filled with wolves in both human and animal form. The council of elders sat on a raised platform, 7 of them, ranging in age from middle-aged to ancient. They watched Isla and Kyle approach with expressions that ranged from skeptical to hostile. The head counselor, a woman with white hair and eyes like chips of ice, spoke first. "Alpha King Kale Thornwood, you have requested this gathering to provide proof of your claim, that your heart, silent since birth, now beats, that you have found your mate in a human woman. The council is prepared to witness your testimony." Kale stepped forward, his hand still holding Isla's. "I do not offer testimony, Counselor Vera. I offer demonstration." He pulled Isla closer, placing her hand over his heart. "For 30 years I have lived with silence in my chest. You have all felt it. You have all sensed the void where life should be. But she changed that." He looked down at Isla, and there was something raw in his expression. "When she is near, my heart beats. When she speaks my name, it thunders. She is my mate by every law of our people. And more than that, she is the proof that I am not the abomination you feared. I am simply a king who was waiting for the right person to bring me fully to life." The council members exchanged glances. One of them, a younger man with cruel eyes, stood. "And what of the prophecy, my king? A king without a heart will bring either unity or destruction. Now that you have a heart, which will it be?" Kale's smile was sharp. "That depends entirely on whether you force my hand. I have ruled with efficiency because I had to. I had no room for mercy or sentiment, but perhaps that was never strength. Perhaps it was just survival." He looked at Isla again. "She has shown me that there is power in compassion, that healing can be as strong as destruction. So I offer you a choice. Stand with me as I build something better than what we have had, or stand against me and discover exactly how creative I can still be with cruelty. The choice is yours." The clearing was silent, except for the wind through the trees. Then Counselor Vera stood, and slowly, deliberately, she bowed her head. "The Alpha King has found his heart," she said. "May it guide him to wisdom." One by one, The other council members followed suit. It was not enthusiastic support, but it was acknowledgement, acceptance, and for now, that was enough. The celebration that followed was overwhelming. Pack members approached Isla with curiosity and suspicion in equal measure, trying to understand the human who had accomplished the impossible. Some were kind, welcoming her with genuine warmth. Others were cold, making it clear that they saw her as a weakness, an outsider who did not belong. Isla navigated it all with the grace of someone who had spent her life being underestimated, smiling when necessary, and standing her ground when challenged. And through it all, Cale stayed close, his presence a constant reminder that she was not alone in this strange new world. But as the night wore on and wine flowed freely, Isla noticed tensions simmering beneath the surface, wolves who smiled to Cale's face but whose eyes held calculation, conversations that stopped when she approached. And Garrett, the scarred wolf who had come to her clinic, watching from the shadows with an expression that promised trouble. She was proven right, 3 hours later when Garrett made his move. He approached Cale with a formal challenge, the kind that could not be refused in front of the assembled packs. Alpha King, I invoke the right of trial. I claim that you are compromised by your attachment to the human, that your heart makes you weak. Prove me wrong or step down. The clearing went silent. This was the real test, the one that mattered more than any council approval. Cale looked at Isla, and she saw him making calculations, weighing options. Then he turned back to Garrett and smiled that terrible smile. You want a demonstration of strength? Very well. What are your terms? Garrett's eyes gleamed. Single combat, no weapons, first blood or submission, and if I win, she leaves. The human goes back to her world and you rule. Without this distraction. Cale's expression did not change, but Isla felt his rage like a physical force. And when you lose? When I lose. Garrett said confidently. I accept your leadership without question. The gathered wolves murmured approval. It was fair by their standards, brutal but traditional. Cale turned to Isla, taking her hands in his. His heart was racing under her palm, strong and fierce. Listen to me, he said quietly. I will win, but if something goes wrong, if somehow he gets lucky, you do not stay and watch. You do not try to help. You run, and you do not look back. Do you understand? Isla wanted to argue, but she saw the fear in his eyes, real and raw. This was a man who had faced death 100 times without flinching, but the thought of failing her terrified him. She nodded. I understand, but you will not lose. He kissed her forehead gently. No, he said, I will not. Then he walked to the center of the clearing, and both men began to shift. The transformation horrifying and beautiful, bones cracking and reforming, skin splitting to reveal fur. Within seconds, 2 massive wolves faced each other, one dark as midnight, one gray as stone. They circled, testing, evaluating. Then Garrett lunged. The fight was savage. Garrett was skilled and brutal, using every dirty trick accumulated over decades of combat. But Cale was something else entirely. He moved like death given form, each strike calculated and devastating. And beneath it all, Isla could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady, giving him something he had never had before. Rhythm, life, purpose. When Garrett went for his throat, Cale twisted impossibly, catching the other wolf's leg in his jaws and wrenching hard. Bone snapped. Garrett yelped and stumbled. Cale pressed the advantage, driving his opponent down, jaws closing around Garrett's throat in a killing hold. But he did not bite down. He held there, making his point clear. Submit or die. For a long moment it could have gone either way. Then Garrett went limp, exposing his throat fully in the ultimate gesture of surrender. Cale held the position for 3 more seconds, making absolutely certain the lesson was learned, then released him and stepped back. When both transformed back to human form, Garrett was bleeding and broken, but alive. He bowed his head. You have proven your point, my king. Your heart has not weakened you. If anything, it has made you more dangerous. Please hit that subscribe button if you are invested. in Isla and Kale's story. We promise there are more twists and turns ahead that you will not want to miss. The weeks that followed the trial were a strange period of adjustment. Isla moved to the palace, not because Kale demanded it, but because returning to her old life had become impossible. The supernatural world knew about her now, and staying unprotected in her small clinic would have been suicide. The palace was both beautiful and isolating, a fortress of black stone filled with wolves who either worshipped or resented their king. Isla carved out her own space, establishing a medical wing where she could treat injured pack members, using her healing skills to build bridges with those who doubted her. Slowly, grudgingly, some of the wolves began to warm to her. They saw that she was not just some fragile human, but someone with her own strength, her own purpose, and they saw how Kale changed when she was near, how the cold, calculating king became something softer, more human. It unsettled them, but it also gave them hope that perhaps change was possible. But danger was never far away. The Eastern Coalition, a group of packs who resented Kale's power, began testing the borders. Small incursions at first, easily repelled, but they were probing for weaknesses. And Isla was the obvious weakness, the one thing that could hurt the Alpha King more than any wound. Kyle responded by increasing security, surrounding her with guards, but it felt like a cage as much as protection. They argued about it frequently, her independence clashing with his need to keep her safe. One night, after a particularly heated disagreement, Isla stormed out to the cliffs behind the palace. The ocean crashed below, dark and infinite. She stood at the edge and let the wind whip her hair, trying to breathe through the frustration. Kyle found her there, approaching carefully. "I am not a prisoner," she said without turning. "I'm not some fragile thing that needs to be locked away." "I know," he said, quietly. "But you are the only thing in this world I cannot lose. That terrifies me in ways I do not have words for." Isla turned to face him. "Then trust me," she said. "Trust that I am strong enough to handle this world. Trust that I chose you. Not because I was forced to, but because when I look at you, I see someone worth fighting for. You spent 30 years believing you were a monster. Let me show you that you are not." Kale closed the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands. "You already have," he said. "Every day you stay, every time you choose this life, you show me what it means to be more than what I was made to be. I love you, Isla Morven. I did not think I was capable of it. But I love you with every beat of this impossible heart, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you." Isla kissed him then, fierce and desperate, and felt his heart racing against her chest. That heart that beat because she existed, because she had shown him kindness in a storm. It was terrifying and beautiful, and absolutely right. The peace lasted exactly 3 more weeks before everything exploded. The Eastern Coalition made their move, a coordinated attack on multiple fronts designed to draw Kale's forces away from the palace. It worked. He had to lead his warriors to defend the borders, leaving Isla with only a skeleton guard. She knew immediately that it was a trap, a distraction. The real target was her. They came at dawn. 6 wolves moving with military precision, killing the guards before alarms could be raised. Isla fought back with everything she had, using the training Kale had insisted on. But she was outnumbered, and they were not trying to kill her. They were trying to capture her. She managed to trigger one emergency alarm before they got a hood over her head and injected something into her neck. The world tilted and faded. Her last conscious thought was hoping that Kale would be fast enough, strong enough, angry enough to find her, before they used her as leverage to destroy him. She woke in a cell, stone walls and silver bars that burned against her skin even without touching. Her captors were smart enough to know that even humans could be dangerous in the wrong circumstances, so they kept their distance. The leader, a woman with red hair and cold eyes, introduced herself as Sienna, Alpha of the Eastern Coalition. "You are worth a lot, little human," Sienna said conversationally. "A king's heart, literally and figuratively. We take you away from him and watch him fall apart, or we kill you and watch that miraculous heart stop beating. Either way, His reign ends, and the power shifts. It was clever, brutal, and entirely expected. Isla kept her expression neutral. "He will come for me," she said. "And when he does, every single one of you will regret this." Sienna laughed. "Oh, we are counting on him coming. That is the point. We will be ready." But Isla knew something Sienna did not. She knew exactly how creative Kale could be with cruelty when someone threatened what was his. Kale's response was swift and apocalyptic. He did not negotiate. He did not wait for demands. He simply declared war. Within hours, every ally he had ever made was mobilized. Within a day, he had tracked the Eastern Coalition to their stronghold. And when he arrived, he did not storm the gates. He simply stood at the entrance and made an announcement that carried through supernatural channels across the territory. "You have taken my mate. You have made the mistake of thinking that my heart makes me merciful. Let me correct that misunderstanding. You have 1 hour to return her unharmed. For every minute after that deadline, I will execute one of your people. For every wound on her body, I will destroy one of your bloodlines. And when this is done, the Eastern Coalition will exist only as a cautionary tale about what happens when you touch what belongs to me." It was not strategy. It was not politics. It was a king who had finally found something worth burning the world for, and every wolf within 100 miles could feel the promise of annihilation in his words. Sienna tried to use Isla as a bargaining chip, dragging her to the gates to show Kale that they had leverage. But when Isla met his eyes across the courtyard, she saw something that should have terrified her, but instead filled her with fierce pride. His heart might beat for her, but his capacity for ruthless violence had not diminished. It had simply found a new purpose. He looked at Sienna and spoke 3 words. "Time is up." What followed was carnage. Kyle's forces hit the stronghold from every angle, coordinated and brutal. But Kyle himself moved through the coalition like a force of nature, searching for Isla with single-minded determination. When he found her cell and tore the silver bars apart with his bare hands, his first words were, "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, and relief broke across his face for just a moment before the mask came back. "Stay behind me," he ordered, then led her out through corridors filled with battle and blood. They were almost to safety when Sienna made her last desperate play, lunging at Isla with a silver blade. Kyle moved to intercept, taking the blade meant for her straight through his shoulder. He did not even flinch. He caught Sienna by the throat, lifting her off the ground with one hand while blood poured from his wound. His voice was conversational, almost pleasant. "I told you there would be consequences," he said. "Did you think I was exaggerating?" Sienna clawed at his grip, choking. Kale looked at Isla then, and she saw him making a choice, asking a question without words. What did she want? Mercy or justice? Isla thought about Martha, about kindness in a cruel world, about being the person who chose compassion even when vengeance would be easier. "Let her live," she said, "but make sure everyone knows why." Kale smiled, and it was terrible and beautiful. "You heard her," he said to Sienna. "She has saved your life. Be grateful." He dropped the woman, who collapsed, gasping. Then he turned to his forces and raised his voice. "The Eastern Coalition is dissolved. Their lands are forfeit. Any who wish to swear loyalty to the Northern Territories may do so. Any who refuse will be exiled beyond our borders. And all of you will remember that mercy today was granted not by me, but by the woman you tried to use as a weapon against me. Remember that when you doubt her strength or her place at my side. If you have been following this journey, please leave a comment telling us your favorite moment so far. And do not forget to like and subscribe for the conclusion of this story. The aftermath of the war reshaped supernatural politics. Kale's decisive victory and unexpected mercy created a new paradigm. Wolves who had seen him as heartless and cruel now saw a king who was still dangerous, but also capable of restraint when his mate requested it. Isla became a bridge between his ruthless nature and a more measured approach to leadership. She was not a weakness as his enemies had believed. She was an evolution. Together they began reforming the Northern Territories, establishing laws that protected the vulnerable, creating alliances through diplomacy rather than just force. It was slow, frustrating work that required fighting centuries of tradition, but they made progress. And through it all, Kale's heart continued to beat, strong and steady, a constant reminder that impossible things could become reality with the right catalyst. 6 months after the war, Isla discovered something that changed everything again. She was in her medical wing, treating a pregnant wolf when she felt it. A pulse of energy, warm and powerful, flowing from her hands into her patient. The woman gasped, her pain fading, and looked at Isla with wonder. "What did you just do?" Isla had no answer. But over the following weeks, as she experimented carefully, she began to understand. She did not just have good hands or intuition. She had an actual gift, something old and rare, healing magic that could mend not just bodies, but spirits. It explained why animals calmed around her, why wounds closed faster under her care. And it explained why she could reach Kale's heart when no one else could. She was not just human. She was a healer, capital H, descended from an ancient bloodline that had nearly died out. The discovery was both empowering and terrifying. It meant she was even more valuable, even more targeted. But it also meant she could protect herself and others in ways she had never imagined. When she told Kyle, he listened in silence. Then he took her hands, feeling the warmth of her power. "This does not change anything," he said. "You were my mate before I knew this. You will be my mate regardless of what powers you have or do not have." But he smiled, something genuine and full of pride. "Though I admit, it is deeply satisfying to know that the woman who brought me to life is even more extraordinary than I realized." They stood together in his study, overlooking the territory that was slowly becoming theirs in a new way. Not through fear, but through a partnership that balanced his strength with her compassion. It was not perfect. There were still challenges, still wolves who resented change, still threats from outside their borders. But they faced it all together. Two impossible beings who had found each other against every odd. The formal mating ceremony was held on the anniversary of the night Isla had found Kale bleeding in the storm. It was a blend of human and wolf traditions, witnessed by both supernatural dignitaries and the few humans who knew the truth about the world hidden in the shadows. Martha was not there to see it, but Isla felt her presence anyway, in the kindness that had taught her to see worth in broken things, in the stubborn hope that had made her stop on that dark road. When Kale placed the ceremonial mark on her skin, binding them together by supernatural law, she felt his heart thundering in time with hers. Two hearts, beating as one, in a rhythm that defied everything the world had said was possible. The Alpha King, who was born without a heartbeat, had found his heart in the most unlikely place. And the girl who had spent her life healing others had found someone worth building a life with, even when that life was stranger and more dangerous than anything she could have imagined. Epilogue. 5 years later, Elias stood in the medical wing that had expanded into a full hospital, watching as young wolves trained in both combat and compassion. Kale's reforms had taken root, slowly changing the culture from one of pure dominance to something more balanced. He still ruled with strength when necessary, but he had learned to lead with wisdom when possible. And beside him, Isla had become more than just the Alpha King's mate. She was the Luna, the healer, a force in her own right. They had 2 children now, twins with their father's silver eyes and their mother's warm smile. Impossible beings born from an impossible love. And every night, when the palace was quiet and they were alone, Kale would pull Isla close and whisper the same thing. "My heart beats because you exist." And she would press her hand to his chest, feeling that strong, steady rhythm, and whisper back, "And mine beats because you chose to live." It was not the fairy tale that humans told in stories. It was better. It was real. It was theirs. And it was absolutely, impossibly, beautifully right. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel for more supernatural romance that will capture your heart. Until next time, Remember that love can resurrect even the most impossible things, if you are brave enough to believe in it.